Battle of Gallipoli. How arrogance met artillery. How did this so-called sick man suddenly roar back to life? Why did the Allies believe outdated battleships and underprepared landings could topple an empire? And what twists of fate turned Gallipoli into one of the most infamous disasters of the Great War? This isn't just a story of trenches and artillery. It's a tale of arrogance colliding with geography. Stay with us. Picture Europe in 1914 as a creaking stage set. Old empires trading glares, fresh alliances whispering backstage, and the Ottoman Empire, long labeled the sick man of Europe, limping but very much alive. For over 2 centuries its prestige had faded, so it wasn't invited to sit at the head table of either the Entente or the Central Powers. Yet both blocs kept knocking, because geography is destiny, and the Ottomans sat astride the Dardanelles and Bosporus like a gatekeeper to the Black Sea. In a world war, the keeper of the gates matters more than the size of the crown. Germany courted Istanbul with investments, military missions, and railways, while the Ottomans eyed Russia with an old animosity that stretched from the Caucasus to the Danube. Britain, unintentionally, nudged the scales when it seized 2 nearly completed battleships the Ottomans had ordered. Imagine paying for your new car and watching the dealer drive off in it. Add in German diplomatic energy and strategic fit, and the Ottomans leaned toward the Central Powers, less out of romance than realpolitik. On October 27, 1914, 2 former German warships, the sleek battlecruiser Guben and her consort Breslau, now flying the Ottoman flag, raided Russian Black Sea ports. It was symbolism with teeth, a formal curtain raiser on Ottoman participation in the war. With that salvo, supply lines and strategy across continents lurched. The Ottoman Empire's entry didn't just add another belligerent, it redrew the logistics map. Ottoman belligerents forced Russia to siphon troops to the Caucasus, diluting its western strength against Germany and Austria-Hungary. Britain and France had to peel forces for the Middle East, stretching an already taut Allied cord. Most painfully, the Ottomans controlled the Dardanelles and Bosporus, maritime choke points that throttled Allied supply routes to Russia. By late 1914, the Western Front had bogged into a stalemate of mud and wire, and the Entente needed a lever elsewhere. The Straits looked like that lever, if only they could pry them open. On January 2, 1915, Grand Duke Nicholas of Russia, tall, austere, and bred in the old-school mold of imperial command, asked Britain for help against the Ottomans pressing in the Caucasus. He was a soldier, resolute, rigid, and convinced that relieving pressure in the south would save lives in the west. London and Paris began sketching a campaign to seize the Dardanelles, reconnect with Russia, and deliver a political body blow to the Ottomans. Step 1. Take Gallipoli, the peninsula guarding the straits, then clean out coastal batteries so the Navy could swing open the gate to Istanbul. Lord Kitchener tapped General Sir Ian Hamilton to lead the Mediterranean Expeditionary Force. The lineup? A multinational cast. The Australian Imperial Force, the New Zealand Expeditionary Force, together the Anzac Corps, the French Orient Expeditionary Corps, plus British divisions, 15 in total. The Allied mood mixed urgency with optimism. The Ottoman army, recently bruised by Italy and Balkan states, was deemed a paper tiger. Winston Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty and chief architect of the plan, believed 50,000 men could do the job. Kitchener raised the estimate to 70,000. Greek generals advised 150,000 and were waved off, because surely audacity would fill the gap where manpower couldn't. If wartime planning had a blind spot, this was it. Hamilton planned to land in the south at Cape Helles and settle Bahir, then drive north along the spine of Gallipoli, knocking out shore batteries and clearing a path for the Royal Navy. The idea had a clockwork elegance: land, pivot, roll the defenses back, wave the fleet through. The Ottomans, however, had brains of their own. The Straits were guarded by the Fifth Army, initially 5 divisions, but eventually 16 committed to the campaign. Command sat with General Lehmann von Sanders, a seasoned German officer tasked with turning terrain into an ally. At his side, soon to be indispensable, stood Lieutenant Colonel Mustafa Kemal, sharp-eyed, relentless, and possessed of the kind of battlefield nerve that would one day birth a nation. Turkish and German planners agreed on the peninsula's golden rule: own the ridges, own the battle. They weren't sure where the Allies would land, so they adopted a flexible defense in depth. The 19th Division under Kemal and the 9th Division covered Cape Helles to blunt southern landings. 2 divisions sat at Bulair in the north, guarding the slender isthmus and key communications. The rest were held inland as a mobile reserve, ready to flow toward whichever beach erupted with Allied troops. It was a chessboard of cliffs, gullies, and scrub, perfect country for defenders who knew every fold of the land. Now pause for a sec. Welcome to the wild frontier of creativity. We don't follow trends. We are a community. Go to the comment section. Drop a comment on your favorite scene of this story. Also, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to never miss a masterpiece. The Allies believed the Ottoman navy was so weak it could barely float. So, in a move that screams rookie mistake, they sent their older warships to Gallipoli, saving the shiny modern ones for the Germans in the North Sea. It was like sending your rusty family sedan to a demolition derby while keeping the sports car polished in the garage. On the 18th of March 1915, the Allied fleet, 18 battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines, steamed into the Dardanelles. The plan was simple. Minesweepers would clear the straits while the big guns kept Ottoman shore batteries busy. But the Allies, brimming with arrogance, ignored their own playbook. Some ships sailed so close to shore they could practically wave at the Turkish gunners. The Ottomans, armed with shore batteries and sea mines, didn't waste the opportunity. HMS Irresistible and HMS Ocean were sunk. HMS Inflexible limped away, badly damaged. The French battleship Bouvet went down with 600 crew in minutes. Admiral de Robeck had no choice but to retreat. The Allies were humiliated, while the Ottomans celebrated like they'd just won the lottery. With the naval plan in ruins, the Allies turned to land. On the morning of 25th of April, they launched amphibious assaults on 2 fronts. The Australians and New Zealanders, Anzacs, were supposed to land south, but navigational errors dumped them at what became Anzac Cove, far north of the intended site. Their mission: seize the heights of Sari Bair and cut off Ottoman troops at Kilit Bahir. The Ottomans hadn't expected a landing there. Only 2 companies defended the beach. But the terrain was a nightmare, steep, rocky, and dominated by Ottoman positions on the high ground. The Anzacs lost 2,000 men on day 1 and made little progress. Ordered to dig in near the shore, they began the trench warfare that would define Gallipoli. Meanwhile, the British 29th Division landed on 5 beaches, S, V, W, X, and Y. At Y Beach, the Allies made progress in the First Battle of Krithia, but confusion and lack of orders squandered the advantage. The Ottoman 25th Regiment held firm. At W Beach, the Lancashire suffered horrendous losses, 60% casualties, as Ottoman defenders shredded the landing force. Across the beaches, the pattern was the same. Initial gains wasted, confusion reigning, and commanders ordering troops to dig in instead of pressing forward. On the 27th of April, the Ottoman 19th Division and part of the 5th Division counterattacked at Anzac. Naval gunfire saved the Allies, repelling the assault. On the 28th of April, the Allies tried again to take Krithia, but the Ottomans stopped them halfway, inflicting 3,000 casualties. The Royal Navy had a small victory when HMS E-14 sank 4 Turkish ships in the Marmara Sea, but Ottoman reinforcements kept pouring into Gallipoli. The Entente had missed its chance for a swift victory. The campaign was now a war of attrition. Enter Mustafa Kemal, the Ottoman officer who would later become the founding father of modern Turkey. On the 30th of April, he launched attacks at Helles and Anzac, breaking through the French sector. But Allied machine guns halted his advance. The next day, the Anzacs counterattacked, clawing forward briefly before being repulsed. The peninsula was now locked in a deadly stalemate, with trenches dug into cliffs and beaches, and both sides bleeding for inches of ground. The Ottomans knew their secret weapon wasn't fancy ships or endless manpower, it was the artillery perched on the ridges of the peninsula. From those heights, they could rain fire on any Allied advance. For the Allies, success meant one thing: seize the high ground, or bleed trying. On the 6th of May, 20,000 Allied troops stormed forward to capture Krithia and the strategic peak of Achi Baba. After a thunderous artillery barrage, they advanced with determination. For 2 days, the battlefield shook with ferocious fighting. Yet, despite the effort, neither Krithia nor Achi Baba fell. The heights remained Ottoman, and the Allies remained stuck in the mud. The Ottomans weren't content to sit back. On the 19th of May, they launched a massive counteroffensive. 42,000 Ottoman troops against 17,000 Anzacs, hoping to drive them into the sea. But fate had other plans. A British aircraft spotted the Ottoman preparations the day before, spoiling the surprise. The ensuing battle was brutal, dragging on until early June. The Ottomans suffered 13,000 casualties, forcing them to ease off and consolidate their lines. The Anzacs, battered but unbroken, dug in deeper. The Allies tried again. On the 4th of June, they hurled everything they had at Krithia and Akibaba. The 29th Division, the Royal Naval Division, the 42nd Division, and 2 French divisions. It was a grand assault meant to break the deadlock. But once again, Ottoman resistance proved too strong. The attack stalled, and the campaign slid back into trench warfare. Mud, disease, and endless stalemate. General Hamilton begged for 95,000 more troops to secure Gallipoli. London said no. Another offensive on the Western Front was already planned. Meanwhile, Bulgaria joined the Central Powers, tightening the noose around the Allies. By September, 3 divisions were quietly withdrawn to Salonika. Finally, the decision was made. Gallipoli would be evacuated. Despite fears of disaster, the Allies managed a remarkably safe withdrawal by the end of 1915. The campaign was short but savage. Both sides lost around 56,000 men. The Entente failed due to lack of coordination, treacherous terrain, poor planning, rampant disease, dangerous overconfidence, fierce Ottoman resistance. For the Ottomans, Gallipoli was a triumph. Their confidence soared, leading to victories like Kut al-Amara in 1916 against the British. For Russia, the failure to open supply routes deepened its crisis, contributing to revolution and eventual collapse. Britain and France, stubbornly focused on the Western Front, trudged on in bloody stalemate. Winston Churchill, disgraced by Gallipoli, resigned and volunteered for active service as a lieutenant colonel. The disaster also helped topple the Asquith cabinet. And the war? It dragged on for 3 more years. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the twists, blunders, and heroics of Gallipoli, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll be the first to catch our next epic story from history's battlefield stage.